What did people eat 100,000 years ago? There is one thing that we can say for certain about the diet of our ancestors from that time period. It would have been very different than the standard American diet. That's because the food that people ate 100,000 years ago was mainly based around fruit and nuts. But there was more to it than just eating whatever they could get their hands on. The consumption of fruit and nuts by early humans followed some particular patterns. And if we take a closer look at those patterns, we can start to see how it helped our ancestors survive and eventually thrive in all corners of the planet. Welcome to FoodSaga. Like, subscribe, and comment for more. Let's start. The first important fact to keep in mind when trying to understand the diet of our ancestors is that the food available to them changed over the year. Our modern grocery store offers us a wide variety of food all year round. And even if we live in a region where not all foods are available year-round, we can easily buy imported foods so that we never go hungry. But this hasn't always been the case. Early humans had to make do with whatever was available in the wild, and they relied heavily on the abundance of fruits, nuts, roots, and seeds that grew or fell during different seasons. So while we might think of early humans as hunter-gatherers, most of the food they consumed was gathered. And that gathering took on a seasonal pattern. Spring brought with it an explosion of new life and edible plants. Summer brought warm temperatures and plenty of fruit to those who lived in warmer climates. In the fall, the harvest was once again plentiful as nuts ripened and many plants stored their energy underground in the form of tubers and bulbs. And winter was the season of rest, though some plants remained edible and nutritious during the colder months. If early humans didn't have access to these plants, then they would have needed to migrate to find new sources of food. Another important fact to consider about the diet of early humans is that it was high fiber, low fat. This is very different from the modern Western diet, which tends to be high in fat and low in fiber. And it makes sense since much of the diet of early humans consisted of plants. Plants tend to be high in fiber and full of micronutrients like vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. They aren't usually very high in fat or sugar. When we look at the plant foods that early humans likely ate, we find a lot of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, roots, and grains. These foods don't tend to be very high in fat and sugar, especially when compared to the foods we eat today. The biggest difference between our diet and the diet of early humans is the way that we process our food today. We tend to add fats and sugars to our meals either because they taste good or because they help preserve foods and keep them fresh for longer. 100,000 years ago, early humans didn't have access to these preservation technologies, so their food would spoil quickly. However, they would have been able to rely on the natural preservatives found in plants like fruits and vegetables. Many plants produce substances that stop other organisms from eating them, and these substances also happen to be useful for preserving human food. So early humans would have been able to safely consume these plants without having to cook them. Cooking has only been part of the human experience for about 1 million years. And while cooking does make food more digestible, it also makes the food more palatable, meaning that it tastes better. So it's likely that early humans would have preferred raw fruits and vegetables over cooked ones. Because early humans didn't cook their food, they would have eaten much of their fruit raw. This would have given them the sweet taste they crave, as well as the glucose they need to survive. However, the plants that early humans relied on for their carbohydrates wouldn't have been nearly as sweet as the fruits we eat today. Plants have evolved alongside humans for hundreds of thousands of years, and they know that we love sweet foods. So in order to ensure that we eat them and spread their seeds, they often make their fruits sweeter and sweeter every year. But this isn't something that happened overnight. It has taken thousands of years of coevolution between plants and humans for our fruits to become as sweet as they are today. So the fruit that early humans ate would have been less sweet and less calorific than the fruit we eat today. They would also have eaten nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are high in healthy fats and protein and would have been an excellent source of nutrition for early humans. Early humans would have likely eaten nuts both raw and roasted. Roasting nuts makes them easier to crack open and digest, and it also enhances their flavor. Early humans would have eaten the soft insides of the nuts, either raw or roasted, and they would have used the shells for other purposes, such as making tools. Grains would have been another staple of the early human diet. Grains are a type of seed that grows on grasses called cereals. Early humans would have eaten grains either raw or roasted, and they would have ground them up into flour using tools made of stone or wood. This flour could then be used to make bread or porridge. Vegetables and greens would have been another important part of the early human diet. Early humans would have eaten vegetables raw or cooked, and they would have used tools made of stone or wood to harvest them. Greens would have been eaten raw, and they would have been used to make wraps or salads. Root vegetables would have been another important part of the early human diet. Root vegetables are vegetables that grow underground, such as potatoes, carrots, and radishes. Early humans would have used tools made of stone or wood to dig up root vegetables, and they would have eaten them raw or cooked. Root vegetables are high in carbohydrates and fiber, and they would have been an excellent source of nutrition for early humans. Overall, the diet of early humans would have been high in fiber and low in fat. This is different from the modern Western diet, which is high in fat and low in fiber. The early human diet would have been more filling for longer because of the high fiber content, and it would have been more nutritious because it would have been higher in vitamins and minerals. Foraging is another important skill that we should talk about. Early humans had to develop a deep knowledge of which plants were edible, safe, and nutritious. This knowledge was essential for their survival. Early humans couldn't just eat any plant they came across. They needed to know which ones were safe and which ones were poisonous. They also needed to know which plants were nutritious and which ones weren't. This knowledge was passed down from mother to daughter, and it was essential for the survival of the group. Early humans couldn't just rely on one or two types of plants for food. They needed to have a wide variety of plants in their diet to get all the nutrients they needed. This meant that they had to be constantly exploring new areas and learning about new plants. Early humans also had to learn how to prepare plants for eating. Some plants needed to be cooked before they were safe to eat, while others needed to be ground into flour or pounded into a pulp. This took time and effort, but it was necessary to get the nutrients early humans needed. Finally, early humans had to learn how to store plants so that they could eat them later. This was important because food wasn't always available when they needed it. Early humans had to be able to store food for long periods of time so that they could eat it during the winter months or when food was scarce. All of these skills were essential for the survival of early humans. Without them, early humans would have struggled to find enough food to eat. They may have gone days or even weeks without food. This would have been dangerous and could have led to starvation. Luckily, early humans were able to learn the skills they needed to find and prepare food. This allowed them to survive and eventually thrive. Nuts and seeds played an important role in the diet of early humans. They were a good source of healthy fats and proteins, and they were easy to gather. Nuts and seeds could be eaten raw or roasted, and they could also be ground up into flour. Seeds could be planted and grown into crops, and they were also a good source of fiber. Early humans would have eaten nuts and seeds as part of their regular diet, and they would have used the oil from nuts and seeds for cooking and lighting fires. Overall, the diet of early humans was a mixed one. They ate a variety of plants, including fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains. Their diet was high in fiber and low in fat, which is different from the modern Western diet. Early humans had to develop a deep knowledge of plants in order to find food and stay alive, but their foraging skills allowed them to thrive. What's more, early humans ate a variety of plants, including fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains. Their diet was high in fiber and low in fat, which is different from the modern Western diet. But it seems to be what our bodies were built for. So the next time you sit down to eat a meal, take a moment to appreciate the diversity of plants that are on your plate. And remember that our ancestors were likely eating many of the same plants for thousands of years before farming was invented. The ability to gather fruit and nuts was likely one of the key factors that allowed our ancestors to evolve and thrive. And perhaps by eating a more natural diet, we can improve our own health and well-being. If you like this video, please subscribe and leave a comment below. Thanks for watching FoodSaga, and see you next time.